This is Maps, Advice and Stories, and grateful that Damian Harris from now Vicious Charm Records, formerly,
Yes.
at Skint Records, but we're going to get into that story as well, has joined me. So we're going to get into your story about the A&R and label side of what you've done, but you've got a history. I've written it down: DJ, artist, journalist, designer. You used to do flyers and posters for me, and as well as
Yeah.
being an A&R and label owner. And yeah, you've done Skint Records and Vicious Charmer. They're the main two labels, I guess, that you've done. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're the only real two I've done. And I've done sort of other bits and pieces or
yeah,
worked with people, but yeah, they're the main ones. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So as I said just before we started recording, we want to try and get into what you've learned, your story about A&R and running and owning a label. And I guess, as we presume, with most people that I'm speaking to, you're very much into music, and there's a journey in there. I guess DJing, similar to Ross Allen. You actually worked in the same record shop as Ross Allen, is that right? In a rhythm? Yeah,
Yeah, we did briefly.
yeah,
Yeah, that was in 92, 93, I think.
yeah,
Yeah. So, I mean, by the time I got the opportunity to start Skin, I had kind of done, I played records. That was my sort of primary thing. But I'd worked in record shops. I'd sold records. I'd designed records. I sort of pressed records for Loaded, who was my sort of the company that I allowed me to do Skint. So yeah, so when I got that first A&R job, it was like I had done quite a lot of those things
yeah,
just because of not necessity, but you just I think you're in that time when you just take every
yeah.
opportunity because you're so obsessed. It's your life. It's everything, you know. So,
You're around the
yeah.
music industry, really. Anywhere that you can be, ultimately, you were trying to get work, I guess, and then finding. What was it always a interest of you to have a label, or did it start with the DJing side, or was there
Um,
an end goal in the back of your mind, even at a young age? You thought, or
no, I mean my brothers were in a punk band. So I'm the youngest of my family, five of us. I'm the youngest by quite a way. So I'll have to give a brief bit of background, but it is kind of relevant. And my brothers were in a band when they were 17, 16, 17, a punk band. And so I observed that as the little snotty brother. And that's kind of a role that I take on quite a lot. Um, and we actually put out, we in the family that my brother had an independent label.
oh wow,
Um,
oh right,
yeah, so I mean, I remember them kind of gluing records sleeves together and things like that. So it was kind of there, but I never set out necessarily to do something. It was kind of just do everything and then see where it takes you. I always thought my path was going to be go to art college, then so I came to art college in Brighton, do an MA at Central St Martin's, work for the face, and that was kind of what I thought was going to be my role and do record sleeves. And yeah, I guess the idea of having a career or it being something like that wasn't really in my head particularly.
yeah. So you were, I mean, we've known each other for a while because you would. I came down to Brighton in '89, and I used to go to. I failed my first year partly from going out too much, but you used
Right.
to DJ at the Cocoa Club, didn't you, on a Saturday night? So
Yes.
I
Yeah.
used to go there on Saturday. So we saw when we just used to bump into each other, know each other for through the early '90s, didn't we? We just there was different
Yeah.
clubs
Yeah.
going on, and we could see each other around. So we've known each other a little while. So from the A&R side, you were talking about Loaded Records. So I remember you used to do flyers for me and posters, and I used to pop into Loaded Records, which was in two porter cabins, best to describe, that were really
Yes.
hot in the summer, weren't they? Really, you couldn't
Yeah.
breathe in there. And I
Yeah.
used to pop in there and see
Yeah.
you there working there, and it used to be fascinating to me because I was running clubs at that point, but then I was thinking, well, these are people I know. Tim and JC, I think, went to Brighton Uni. One of them went to Brighton Uni, didn't they? Is that right?
Yeah, they
Both
both
did.
went there.
Yeah,
They were at the I think it was a polytechnic then.
yeah. So yeah,
Uh
Yeah,
yeah. But that, yeah, they went there as well.
yeah.
So and yeah, they had a business doing background music tapes.
Oh
Uh,
yes, yeah, yeah.
that was from their business studies. I think they did a business studies course or
Which is the
something
same
along
course
those
I
lines.
did.
Right.
Yeah. So when
Okay.
I saw them
Okay.
there, I was thinking, oh, these are two people who are, they've done the same courses I've done and they're running a record label. So I guess it was giving me inspiration in its own way. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So that was one of the good things. It's sort of being able to. I mean, maybe this is getting into it a bit too early, but having people with business knowledge was very, very important for me because I am terrible on that side of it. So I just sort of go with instinct, really.
yeah.
And so, yeah, having someone who, knew that stuff was very, very important to me.
So you're working at Loaded and sort of generally doing, I saw you, I remember bumping into you and you had a bunch of records that you were posting and you were doing, it was not it wasn't a glamorous label job.
No,
It was you were doing that hard work. And so what was the jump to the A&R? What happened? So you're at Loaded, and then there's I guess you've got an idea to start a label. But what is the process for you that happened between working at a label and then them, I guess, helping you
yeah.
do a label?
Well, okay. So I started working for Loaded, and my job was pretty much everything and anything. So I was getting records pressed. I was liaising with pressing plants, liaising with distributors, moving records around, mailing out the records, sort of kind of doing it all, doing the labels. Um, and also working for the other business as well. Once a month, we would have to mail out tapes to harvesters and tie racks. And then basically, they were going to sack me. They were just about to sack me because amiable but useless was my because uh, Tim Jeffrey used to run the Cool Cuts chart, which was quite a big influential thing in the sort of early 90s,
Which
well,
was
all
in
through the
Record Mirror,
90s.
is that right? Was that in?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, which
yeah.
is in
So the
Record Mirror,
magazine,
which
yeah,
was
yeah,
one of the few sort of club
yeah.
magazines of the time. Um,
Pre-internet, and you'd look on it really to see what should I be searching
yeah,
out for? What's a genuine buzz rather than a too hyper for buzz? I guess is that right?
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it was that sort of thing. So we would have everyone from record labels and promotions companies ringing up, and I was a huge tart and would do anything for a free record. So I would, when these people would ring up, and I would sort of chat them up and be flashing my eyelids at them to get them to send me a white label, um, and not really concentrating on my job. So they sort of got to this stage, and it's like, well, look, we're gonna have to get rid of you. And somehow, and I wish I could remember, I left that meeting with the opportunity to do Skint
So
rather than by
did you
pre-course
know
of
they were going
fame.
to sack you? So you were thinking in your mind, let me
No,
come up with, oh wow, so that was quite an improvised.
thinking on your feet. I had been using the studio. So one of the things, I mean, the money was terrible, which was one of the reasons why I had to do the posters for Shake Your Wig.
I'm going to say my money
And
that I paid you for posters was terrible as well, wasn't it? It wasn't that
it was pretty much, but that and a few menus for local, pubs and everything. So yeah, but they had a studio and I could use that. And I had been working in there, been learning how to use it, had been making stuff, and kind of which was sort of breaks and hip hop, but what would become in that sort of breaks
Yeah,
sampley area.
yeah.
And yeah, and as a DJ, I mean, I was also DJing probably 5 times a week when I was there, and doing lots of sort of bars and things like that. So you're playing to yourself for 3 or 4 hours. And so I had this idea. I had the idea that there was something sort of happening. I'd quite like to do a label. I had an idea for something slightly different. And so, yeah, and so I thought I would try it because Loaded just did house music. And so what I said is, can I start something doing anything that isn't house?
Okay, so that was the remit.
House
Yeah,
music. Yeah. And so they said yes, remarkably, because and they said find your first three records to release because you know, if you're going to start something new, it's good to have three. You know, it's not like here's one record and 9 months later here's another. Have some releases
which
set
is
up.
really good advice, isn't it? I think that as well. Quite simple
Yeah,
advice, but really good advice. Yeah.
yeah, and don't lose any money and pull your finger out and do your other jobs as well. And from that moment, I have never worked so hard, unless maybe on my foundation. When I was found on my foundation course, I like just worked really hard. But yeah, I had never worked so hard, and I would spend all my time in the studio or working on the computer because we had a Mac Classic. So I was doing logos. So I was just doing everything.
So I guess in a way you had a bit of a reality check about, okay, I bet this is my chance now to sort this out, basically. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely, because it was. I think I was generally regarded as, oh bless, you know, a bit rubbish, nice but rubbish, and I think that was often.
you're a professional with delivering me my posters and flyers. Although to be honest, every now and then you were a little bit late, I think.
Right, okay.
No, but I think you always do. Because you see, I didn't feel that with you. I just felt, I mean, I didn't know what's going on. And I know I used to come there. I would sometimes chat and pick up the posters. I'm thinking in hindsight, I could see sometimes Tim and JC looking at me and like, oh, why are you hanging around here? But I think maybe they were more annoyed with you than they were with me. Maybe hopefully.
Yeah.
It doesn't do enough work as it is, and then now you're here chatting away about like bits and bobs. So yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But so yeah, so it was a really good reality check and really good advice to have have a plan, I guess, not just jump in there. And so what I guess
yeah.
did was this 94 or 95? What year was this?
Yes, 94. So our first release was 95, sort of early 95. But I had our first release, I had test pressings a good 7 or 8 months beforehand. So it would have been early 2004.
And that's one you gave me.
There you go. In my
Still got
handwriting.
it. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Smudged and a smudged stamp.
I think you might have
well.
given me the label after, but yeah, I think this was one of the ones there. You would come down to the club every now and then, wouldn't you? And I remember you'd hand me test pressings and things. So
yeah.
And that's the very first release, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that was it. So that was Santa Cruz by Fatboy Slim. So yeah, because we were right next door. That was the other thing. So in what used to happen in that time when I was saying I was working all the time, I would finish the day, work in the studio or on the computer, come into the jazz rooms or upstairs, I can't remember, the Reform or whatever it was called at the time, and then go back sort of inspired by, and then often fall asleep in the studio and sort of wake up back there. But I mean, you were a real inspiration as well, because at that time there were so many good clubs that were playing a lot of different music. Muffle Waffle as well was on at the time, and there was a couple of other ones, and the Cocoa Club was always a big thing for me. So I kind of my dream was to have a record that everyone would play.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or that sort of you'd all play. Yeah. So because it was. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing that, Jim, because I was just listening to it again the other day, and it was reminding me when I got it, because Santa Cruz is the more faster breakbeat one. And I remember at the time thinking, I'm not really understanding what this is because it's a bit rock on there. But then the other tune, which was quite slow, because what I remember for the night I was seeing at the time, Shake Wig, which was a Wednesday at the Jazz Place, we did it every Wednesday. It was quite a weed smoking crowd in there, and the music that we played was actually quite slow in parts, and then it would get faster, but we'd be quite slow as well. So to me, that made a more sense. But you were seeing something, I guess, in a different way that I wasn't seeing. I was in a slightly different scene, but there was always overlaps between everything going on in Brighton, because I would love going to all the other clubs as well, because I would hear tunes. Oh yeah, that would be good at Shake Your Wig, and you go to other things. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was. And I mean, I loved Shake Your Wig, and and it was, and I loved the Jazz Rooms as a club. But I had the acid house experience as well. And so there were times when you get, and Mo Wax, Talking Loud, Mo Wax was brilliant. I loved it. But it was the more interesting stuff. It was the sort of like the Richie Hawtin or the Motorbase tracks and things like that. Those were the things that were really exciting me more, rather than I would kind of listen to some of that Mo Wax stuff and go, come on, just bit more energy. And I think that was certainly one of the things that I brought to it, or I wanted from a record. So I mean, another little kind of ethos I used to sort of tell myself, because there was a lot of really good sort of down tempo stuff happening, but I always just thought there's no point just copying or just going for that. It's like if you're gonna go to the effort of putting a record out, make it something, either it be amazing or something quite different, and something that no one else was doing. And that was a little thing I tried to sort of tell myself.
And you were confident in that, weren't you? I think I always think that's important. You were definitely trying to do something that, look, not everybody might get this. And I think even for what we do at True Thoughts still now, I feel it's important we maybe sign something or do something that, look, there's going to be only a handful of people that are going to understand what's going on with this record, and a lot of our audience might not like it, because I think it just gives you an edge. But also for what you were doing, if somebody's listening to this now, they'll be going, oh, Fatboy Slim, it's really easy. But I think one thing some people might not know is it wasn't like, oh, Norman Cook, let's sign him and do this. Norman wasn't this like big pop star. It was like, I was booking him at our night, and it wasn't, I was paying him 100, 150 quid to come and play the night. He wasn't superstar DJ, and it wasn't like, oh, I've got 500 gigs I could be doing instead of this. So it was quite a different thing. But Norman was also, he was quite a chameleon. He'd done that fried funk food, and I guess that was what I was connecting. Oh yeah, this is on from fried funk, but maybe going another step forward, isn't it? And I know that's what you were doing. I felt there was another journey, a different journey for him, wasn't it?
Well, and different drugs.
Yes, of course,
and it's important to say it, because around that time as well, with what we call the House of Love years, so we would sort of, I hope it's all right to talk about this. Norman had sort of discovered ecstasy, and it really changed him in terms of how he made music. He was from a very much a pop world. He had a pop sensibility. He did like that sort of, because I remember some of those sets, and he would play that sort of disco, sort of punk funk kind of left field disco type stuff, and I loved that.
He played Phil Asher Hope, didn't he? That tune, and which was
no, exactly, and that was that's Norm at his best, is just going, oh, I think this could work. I think, and all DJs really. So we would sort of like be around his house, enjoying ourselves off our faces. And Norman played the Fried Funk Food EP, and I said, can I have this for they've given me a label, stupidly. And JC was there. JC was also there. off on another journey. And he said, no, you can't, because they're doing this for Ireland are doing this
Yeah.
as a freak power sort of connection. But I'll make I'll make you something.
Oh, right. Okay.
And it's like, okay. And so, and initially we couldn't tell anyone that it was him, because he still had he still was under contract with Freak Power. They were doing the difficult second album. Yeah, but I think by that time he was more interested in making these weird,
Yeah.
weird records that sort of we weren't quite sure where they fit.
Were you giving him a remit about what you're looking for at all, or was it just coming from Norman? Or
It was a little bit. And he always says this in interviews, but he said that I kind of said to him, because he he is quite chameleon like, Norman, and there's a lot of influences there, and he's very much from that original breakbeat ethos of that crate digger thing of, you might find a breakbeat on a Gary Newman record,
yeah.
or an old 70s funk track, or anywhere. So he had that kind of open mind. And yeah, so I said, I think I said, so like, it's sort of the funk of hip hop, the funk and machismo of sort of like of hip hop. Because he always did really good things with a little rap sample or things like that. He would make hooks. Um, and the sort of the euphoria of the groove of disco, and then the euphoria of acid house,
Oh,
and
wow.
a bit
Okay.
of the swagger of rock. So it was kind of, that's what I sort of said, that because but yeah, to him, but I think
I'm just going to
he's
point out,
good.
I mean, which that was really, wasn't it? I guess it had, it was it was exactly that,
It was,
which was unusual at the time. I guess I mean, to me, in where I was at, there was nothing really going on like that. Did it do well
yeah,
initially? Did it fly out of the
no,
shops? Yeah, yeah.
no, it didn't really. And I mean, we got a great reaction to it, but in terms of selling it, I mean, if we had done that on Loaded, I mean, at the time, a good house 12-inch on Loaded, like a standard one would do sort of 5,000 12 inches.
Wow.
Um, and a really good one would do 10 to 15. And an average, a bad average one would do 2,000. I mean, which is insane now when you struggle to sell 300 12 inches.
Yeah.
Is so yeah, and so I mean, a couple of weeks after release, I was really down, and I was really quite depressed, and
Oh,
just going,
wow.
shit, this isn't going well.
Do you remember
But
what you
we,
pressed up or anything like that on it, or what the sales were?
um, I think we would have probably done about three, three, five, between 3 and 5,000, and we had probably sold 800 in the first couple of weeks.
Oh, right.
Uh,
Wow. Okay.
and it was like, okay. But what we were getting was, we were getting sort of people saying the people who love it really love it. So it might not be selling well, but people are really enthusing about it. And sort of Mark McQuillan, who was our label manager at 3MB, was like, no, it'll, everyone likes it. It will
Okay.
happen. Don't
Yeah.
worry. Don't get too down. And then we would, we kind of picked up things like Tom and Ed, Chemical Brothers. They were playing it, and because it's a really difficult record to play.
Yeah.
And reading their book at the moment, and they had the same thing with Song to the Siren, which was their first thing. It was kind of, you have to stop everything and to play this, and there weren't that many DJs who would sort of, Weatherall perhaps, or sort of people who would go, right, I'm just going to stop this record, and this has got enough wallop at the beginning
Yeah.
to go. But Santa Cruz is this sort of quite floaty. I mean, yeah. So it took a while for people to
Okay.
realize
Yeah.
how, it's, yeah.
And that's an important thing, isn't it? To know, like, you can't, you're not jumping straight in, and but there is I guess there's a plan. So there wasn't any pressure from you from an A&R point of view of like, well, this is done badly, that everybody was feeling, including Tim and JC, let's just keep going forward. Was that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
Brilliant.
no, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we did the first three.
And what were the first three that came out?
So Fatboy Slim, Arthur,
Oh,
who were
yes.
a Brighton baggy
Yeah, yeah.
band
Yeah, I remember that.
with a pretty terrible remix by me. Um, but the Chemicals used to play the dub, which I always loved.
Okay.
And then Hip Hop Optimist, which was Andy Barlow, who went on to
Oh,
Lamb.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So we had that, and there was a Tim Goldsworthy mix of on there as well. And we got very close with Lamb. He sort of sent us the Lamb stuff, and it was like, Jesus, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But never quite happened. So yeah, and then I was fourth. So midfield general was number four. So yeah, so that was sort of like that was our first lot, and it was very much we're just gonna stick at it, and
Were you pressing
yeah.
up at that? I'm just thinking now because it's pre-digital age. It's pretty much you're only doing vinyl at that stage. That's the only way. There's no digital outlet. You're not necessarily doing CDs for dance singles. So were you reducing the pressings that you were doing, or is it, at that moment in time was it standard just for what you're doing, press up 3,000 everything? Because
We well we were the only slight difference was that we were plugging into 3MB. So 3MB were doing that. And my only sort of thing about that is it was in retail at the time, it was the sort of HMV and Virgin wars, so to speak. And they would, and so you kind of had to play this game a bit, which I felt uncomfortable with. And it was like, hey, right, HMV will take 4,000 if you do this. And it's like, oh, I don't really want to do that. And it's like, well, yeah, but they will. And then they'll send back 3,000 of them, 8 weeks later. And it's like, oh, thanks. So we tried to sort of try to avoid that as much as possible. And only really got into that when later on, when you're sort of trying to have chart
yeah,
records, or when you sort of enter the game. I
and
liked that we were
at this
working
point,
sort of under.
yeah, so at this point you're sort of ticking over, aren't you? You're, I guess, maybe establishing the identity of the label a little bit. It's very eclectic what's going on, and I mean, very different. It's still at that time there wasn't this scene you could. I know Big B as a scene happens later, but there wasn't this, go-to place that you can send records to. Oh yeah, they'll review this, or you're trying to find out, look, who might be into this, who's going to pick up it. But I guess on the underground, there's probably DJs and pockets of people who are enjoying it and really
Yeah,
loving it.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. No, because I mean, our first. So we did. So once we'd done that first wave, then we started getting the demos, and
right.
then people would go, "Oh, I've got this weird thing that you might like," and that's when we got Bentley Rhythm Ace. I mean, that first Bentley Rhythm Ace EP was just a revelation. We got Indian Rope Man, still one of my favorite. Indian Rope Man by Indian Rope, still one of my favorite
I
Skint
love Indian Rope
releases.
Man. That was definitely one I played a lot as well at the
Yeah,
time.
fantastic record. And also Wreck.
Oh
And
yes, of course.
Wreck was really important in the whole thing.
Got the records down here. So look, again, another
Yeah,
test pressing that
yes,
you delivered, hand sprayed
yeah,
by Rec, and then
sprayed,
there's that. Yeah.
yeah, the album. I know, and it was quite funny. I think sort of numbers. I think our sixth release was, I think it was Everybody Loves a 303, which was sort of kind of our most kind of commercial so far. And it was a big record. It was a big, like, quite exultant. Is that the right word? But yeah, it was a big track.
And that was number
And then
six.
that was Skint 6, I
Okay, well,
think.
yeah.
Um, certainly 6 or 7, and then we followed it with Rec, and I loved that. I loved that. You know, oh, here's this big hands in the air, massive record, and then great, what's next from Skint? Oh, this smells like cat's pee, which those records do. The ones with the sprayed sleeves, and what is this? It's just this murky, weird sort of
Unusual,
hip hop.
even for, I guess that trip hop thing was going on, but even in that, it was very left for there at that time, wasn't it? So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but I mean, Razzmatazz is I'm so proud of that record, and I kind of, as we things got a bit commercial and Norman got bigger, I sort of clung to Rec in a look. We are still underground. Look.
Were
We're
you feeling
still cool.
pressure then because as well, maybe let's just rewind a bit. So the sixth release, which is the second Fatboy Slim thing, was that the point where things it did sort of blow up, or not to the extent of Fatboy Slim as we know today, but was that like, okay, it's gone up to a level on that one?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was a little bit. I mean, we interestingly we got it's one of those things where we got not burnt, but it was suddenly like, oh, this the reaction to it when we first sent it out was good. We might be able to get some radio. We might be able to, and we actually made a video, and we spent quite a lot of money on a video that Norman hated. Norman didn't like, and he didn't refuse to have it used. And we had just spent, I mean, I can't remember it was between 15 and 20,000 pounds, which was more than anything we had done. You know, that was enormous for us.
Yeah.
And he went, no, I hate that. I don't want it used. And
As an A&R, is your job then, are you dealing with that side of things, or you just go, okay, I'm going to let Tim and JC deal with this, or are you trying to
um,
convince him to use it, or are you feeling pressure that, because that's that
we
A&R bit that where are those lines between, like, there's a business thing going on with the creative thing now, isn't it, of a video that we paid for. Did you all like it and think, why can't we use it, or were you just, you didn't want to use it either?
um, well, it's quite interesting in terms of what it led to
Okay.
and the lesson we learned from it. So now we can look at it going, do you know what? It opens certain doors. I'll get onto that in a minute. No, I mean it was because it was just. I mean, it was predominantly just me and JC. Tim did loaded, so it was just us two. So we were the marketing department. You know, we were the video department. So I mean, I remember being fairly mortified, and you know, it was. So the video was a skating pig in a prosthetic suit who was addicted to milkshake. And I think it came from his management, or you know, it was just as I say it, I feel uncomfortable, but it was sort of like, okay, let's see how it goes. And
Oh, so
yeah,
you had
it was.
reservations about the video idea to begin with?
I mean, it was. We were just nervous,
Yes.
but you're also drawn along by the excitement of it. There's still that, oh, okay, you know, because video was big
Yeah.
then. Videos could break records, and
And
you
it's
know, it was,
pre-YouTube. It's, you're going to
yeah,
get on
yeah, it was,
rotation,
yeah,
and a way
yeah.
to
If
hear
you can
music.
get
Yeah.
something on rotation on
Yeah.
MTV,
Yeah.
you make your money back. You can make your money back from the plays or from MCPS and all of those things, but also, yeah, it takes you to a whole other level.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, it has, you know, you can be dazzled by that a little bit. So yeah, when he did that, and it was like, you sure you don't want it and he was like, no, I will make a video for much less. And so he I don't know, Perv,
Yeah.
rest in peace. He So basically they made us a video for the cost of a tape, a videotape, and it's you can find it on YouTube, but it is um, basically the tracks playing is a real close up of Perv. Perv was a sort of a Brighton club legend, a very good friend of ours. He was called the Perv. I mean, that was just what he was known as, and worked for us for a long time. So basically, it's close up of his face, black and white. He's wearing a cowboy hat and he's smoking a cigarette, and he slowly turns like that, and then someone writes on his cheek, "Why make videos?" Question mark. Norman writes, "Why make videos?" And he was going, "There you go." And it was like, okay, okay. So the video commission, the video plugger was like, oh, right, okay. But what that led to, and that lesson that we learned there was, we're not going to do anything unless we really like it. We're not going to play those games that, it just had a, it's funny watching that one day at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
I've just watched it, and you kind of see that sort of early 90s attitude of, yeah, rad, gnarly. And you have to play this sort of MTV game, and it's utter bollocks, and it looks really fake. But that was sort of, the lure of that was, yeah, it's a skateboarding pig, yeah. And it's just like, oh, Jesus.
So a
And so
brilliant
he
lesson.
said,
A
huh?
brilliant, a
Yeah,
brilliant lesson for you, but also at this time you're still 100% indie, aren't you? At this stage, there's no major
yeah,
labels
yeah,
or anybody. You're just doing this on your own terms, so you've got the power
yeah,
to
yeah,
be absolutely all right. This is what we're going to do then. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you do get a little pressure from. So we would have used Anglo Plugging. So his manager owned a company called Anglo Plugging. They were one of the bigger radio pluggers. They had a TV department as well. We also had our distributors 3MB, and we had a press. I don't know whether we had a press company by then. Um, the Darling department, who would send it to magazines and things like that. So we did it all ourselves initially, but then you started to get that pressure, and they go, well, if you had a video, we could open this, and you're sort of lured into sort of parting with your buying some magic beans that might not necessarily be magic. Yeah, so it comes in. So then, yeah, so like from that moment, and Norman had always said, I think he was a bit ground down by playing the majors game, and right, you got to do a video, you got to go and do every regional radio station and all that. And he was like, no, I kind of just, this is mates having fun, and we've got to believe in everything we put out.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anyone watches the Rockefeller Skank video after this, that wasn't us. So because I felt that also wasn't great, but it worked. But yeah, so after that, Norman was like, right, we're gonna be odd. We're gonna not do the obvious. We're gonna, if we've all got to feel it.
Okay. So at this stage, is Norman still? Are you still having to? Is Norman still under contract, and you're having to? You've got, I guess, something that you now know is beginning to pop, and I guess a bit of solidity. So that again, that's something that happened at True Thoughts. When you get something successful, we had that with Bonobo. Suddenly, you feel this validity, and then you feel, oh, we've got a bit of success, and we've got something to try and build on, which also does take you to another level, and not a pressure, but you're trying to figure out, look, what space are you in? So were you
Yeah.
feeling all roads were about Norman, or were you still very much, this is a
No.
label with I want to do other things there? I mean, from the outside,
No.
it felt like you were always, when I was talking to you, you were generally talking about the label all the time, not just
Yeah.
Norman. So yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean, this is, without it turning into a therapy session, it's sort of like, I think one of the things that I struggled with at the end was that Norman was so dominant that sometimes I felt other things got overlooked, and we were Fatboy Slim's label, and people presumed he owned it or sort of things like that. And so I always sort of tried to make it about, you know, everyone. And in that, so in from releases sort of like 6 to the next sort of 10, we had not only had Bentleys who people were going nuts for. We
And
had
that
the
captured
local,
a moment of time, isn't it? It was one of those that you felt there's all right. And I remember from the outside, again with Bentley's, it's like I liked some of their stuff, some of it I wasn't getting, but I knew there is something going on here. And what is it? Like what you know there's something
yeah,
fresh going on because you know from a younger I've seen all these different scenes go on, and it was okay, there is something going on here. And bits of it I was understanding, bits of it I was, but I think that's normal in a scene because no one really the rule book isn't there yet, is there? So there's stuff that's
yeah,
just being made that no one knows quite why they're doing it, and some is working and some isn't it? So
yeah. But I tell you what, that's really interesting because I know I sort of said I kind of wanted records that everyone would play, but also I knew that Bentleys wouldn't be for you, but I couldn't I couldn't not, you know, I couldn't not put it out because it was just like anything else. And so, and I'm not putting you in this, but there was a certain amount of purists in the house scene, in the sort of trip hop scene, in the
in
hip
the
hop scene
scene, oh
that
yeah,
I really wanted to piss off, that
yeah.
annoyed me incessantly. And
You were
you
sort of
see a
quite
lot of
vocal
those.
about that to me. I think you weren't ashamed of it. You were wanting to be like it doesn't have to be all jazz cigarettes and you're wearing the right clothes and this and that. You know, it was
Sort of, yeah.
yeah,
So what if it doesn't have a masters at work dub? It's, you
yeah.
know, it's uh and I liked that, and I liked the sort of upstart snotty little brother role of going, what the fuck is this? And that appealed to me, and I think we, you know, that was, we benefited from that sort of ideal, and that sort of idea of us as a label, that we could do whatever we want, and that it was always going to be a surprise,
Yeah.
you know, what's
Yeah, and
next. And
that
then, you know,
yeah,
yeah, and then the
and
Low Fidelity All Stars came along,
oh yeah. So you're
and
still
then,
indie at all this point, basically, with lo-fi coming as well. So yeah,
but after that, that's when everyone started getting in touch, and that's when the majors started sniffing around
okay.
and
So
wanting to,
so had
yeah,
Fatboy the Better Living Through Chemistry had that come out already by then when the majors or was it
yeah.
starting already?
So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, so we did a compilation. So we did the first Brassic Beats Volume One, which I think that was 96, because we had this sort of idea that could, CDs were becoming more important and more viable, and so the idea of doing an album on CD, you know, everyone sort of like that, and certain other territories around the world were into that. Um, so we thought, right, okay, we'll collect. This is the sort of Brassic Beats Volume One, is this sort of first part of us, and yeah, and that was the first time we got a PR company in and to do some press for us. And then suddenly there was this. So because we hadn't really tried to get any press, it was like suddenly the Face and Enemy and Melody Maker, and someone could go, this is what's happening with this label, and they might have heard about something, or they might have heard Bentley's, or little sniffs on the radio. Like, I don't know whether Marianne had started the Breeze block yet, but we had a few little fans. So that was sort of another part of momentum that we could go, and that's when we sort of first started doing little bits of press. The Face ID kind of would go, you know, because yeah, we had Bentley's, Fatboy Slim, Wreck, Hard Knocks, Low Fidelity All Stars,
And
and
then and
Hard
then
Knocks as
And even
Yeah,
I remember at the time, because Bentley, I'm not sure the timelines, but I remember Bentley then seemed, you could hear the song everywhere, and then Lamb started to be big, and then you done that 12-inch. It almost seemed to be like, okay, well, this indie's finding all this stuff that the majors are now coming to sign, and that
yeah,
indie was you, wasn't it? So,
yeah,
or
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And
So
so you
we
were
had this.
capturing a moment, weren't you, in time, weren't you, in a music moment, which is not
Yes,
easy to do, but you were doing that, weren't
no,
you? Yeah.
yeah, no, we were, and yeah. So that's when people came sort of sniffing around. So we ended up doing a deal with Parlophone, a Parlophone, who at the time were one of the best labels around. They had Radiohead, they had Blur, they had Supergrass, all sort of acts in that world that I really liked. They were genuinely regarded as the sort of the best label. So we were talking to them, um, and yeah, so they sort of took Bentley's. We were still sort of like a logo on there, and we were sort of still involved. But
Can I
that
ask
was
how that works from an indie level? Is it do you earn from it, or is it not one of those that you earn?
you, you get an override. So yeah, you would be on a percentage
Okay,
like the band is on a percentage.
okay. So not a huge chunk, but you're there getting a percentage. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably do this now because then what happened is so we were being flaunted, but like so pretty much all the label and all of the majors took us out for dinner at some point over this stage, and we had it boiled down to two types of deal. One was from Sony, which was they take half of your company. They have first refusal on everything around the world, so they can take your stuff and sell it everywhere else, and they give you money to do your stuff, and A&R budgets, marketing budgets. So basically, you drive it. Or so that was the creation model, and that was
Yeah.
sort of like what Oasis did. And so Oasis were in that mode. So creation still ran creation, and they just gave it to Sony. The food records argument, which is what Blur were on, was you just you work alongside a bigger label, and you are a logo and probably two people in a big marketing meeting. So it's less stressful.
Yeah.
It's much less, it's like, here you go. And you get a cut, you get a percentage,
You're
but
almost
they're
handing it
paying.
over for them to do their stuff,
Yes,
ultimately.
they're taking the risk.
Yeah.
So those were the sort of types of deals back then that yeah, so those were the sort of two things that we were offered and
And I
had
guess
to
you
make
want
a
the
call.
creativity. You want to see after the video thing and all of that, you're saying, let's actually be involved in this. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think there was ever much question. Although we loved Parlophone, we had sort of developed a relationship with them, and they were really cool. They were a really interesting label, and every time you went up into the offices, they'd give you, interesting records, and yeah, so they weren't a bad
Yeah.
major. If you were going to go with one,
Yeah.
they would have been the ones to go with. So yeah, so that came a bit later, but everyone was sniffing around our bands,
Okay.
and you're going, either we lose them, we just end up going, okay, see ya, and we'll just have that catalogue of their first album, or we get to keep them and carry on working with them.
Yeah. And I guess from an A&R and label point of view, if you're doing something that's popular, you want to think, well, can we take it now with the backup
Mm,
of a major? Because we've historically seen that in this country, Soul to Soul can get to number one, can't they? You can have a creative force driving the song and the video and representing themselves well, can't you? But and can do things in a major label setting, and you were on a roll, weren't you, in doing that? So, and I guess
Yeah,
that's similar stuff that I think I've read interviews with James Lavelle. He was trying to sign Portishead as an indie, and you can't do it. You can't compete if a major. I guess even more so back then in the sort of
yeah,
90s is the checks they can offer are like vastly different, aren't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we lost Lamb
Yeah.
quite early on to Fontana, and that was a sort of all a bit that stung, and it was like, oh, I really, because they recorded some of Cotton Wool in our studio, and
Oh, I didn't know.
I I I had I think they probably ended up re-recording it. But yeah, I mean, we had been talking about. I sort of was doing like having a go at doing their logo and all these things. So it did hurt, and it is a
Yeah,
bit upsetting, especially when you develop that connection and you really believe in them
yeah,
and you can't stop listening to it.
yeah, yeah,
That's always the thing. I can't stop listening to this record. I When I get into that situation of I'm, sit down in the office or, the day ends and you can, that's the first thing you play.
yeah, yeah.
And that was kind of always, yeah,
And that's part of A&R, isn't it? Like being hard and losing those things. I mean, we've had, with some of our artists, they've gone when we wanted to carry on working with them. We've had, approached by labels, and then they've, we said okay. But yeah, I mean, we're not hardcore on holding anybody to contracts. When all they say is, look, we've just got a chance that you can't give us. And for me, I would feel so guilty thinking, well, we're holding you, and here's your tiny
yeah,
budget, and somebody who can offer you all of this is,
yeah,
what can we do? And we've offered that, okay, like you said, just getting a logo on there or something. If you get a little override, just go and do it, which you don't want to do, but you still feel really sad. And it's a hard thing because you sort of want them to win because you like them, but then you feel really sad and why they're going.
yeah.
It's yeah.
I mean, in the sort of darker days, when it sort of was less fun and you were sort of doing that sort of getting some glee for things that not working, and you're just going, oh, this isn't, this is
Yeah,
horrible, or this isn't why I got into it. So yeah, it is a tricky one. And I guess there's a good football analogy in there as well. It's like if you lose your star striker to someone but get paid
yeah,
millions of pounds, or it funds
yeah,
another wave of new stuff.
yeah. Yeah. And you have
Yeah,
to be strong on that stuff and just try and move forward, isn't it? And hope you've got a label that, can do that, isn't it? Which I guess you had. It was, I mean, to me, I still almost still think at this stage is it still wasn't just purely Fatboy Slim. At least me from the outside looking in, it didn't seem like
yeah,
lo-fi seemed to be doing well. There were like pockets of things going on everywhere. It wasn't the big machine that was Fatboy Slim at this stage, was it? So it was about a
no,
label,
no,
wasn't it? And what you're
yeah,
doing, and you're capturing a moment and understanding like a scene and an energy that's going on.
yeah. I mean, yeah, no, the Norman sort of trajectory was sort of quite interesting because yeah, so that was 98 that we released um You've Come a Long Way Baby. And that's when it went really nuts. And but what had happened is um he had Brimful of Asher. There were sort of two remixes of his that came along. Brimful of Asher, Renegade Master,
Yeah,
which of course was Roger.
yeah.
And
It was,
Roger Wildchild, obviously we had lost him, and that was a really big moment for us. Roger had been on Top of the Pops,
yeah,
about 2 weeks before he died,
yeah,
and that hit us hard.
yeah.
And so I think we both just went, right, we're not going to play around anymore. Yeah.
Wow. So it
So
really affected you in that way about, okay,
well,
yeah,
yeah,
in a
I
lot
mean,
of
it was
particular way. Yeah,
because I took Roger's job, and Roger taught me the studio, and I did all the labels for Roger's stuff as well. I was a graphic designer for Gun for Hire, but yeah. So, and I think we both, like both me and JC, just went, right,
Yeah.
we've got this opportunity. Let's go for it. Because I tell you one thing, I always look at what you've done with True Thoughts, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling, but Paul Jonas, whenever he's had a few drinks over the years, he would love to ask me questions about spending money. Because you had this idea, you had this sort of thing of we keep it very tight, we spend accordingly, we're not chasing anything. And it's the reason why you're still here. And it's the reason why you've got the company you have, and you've got 20 years worth of, we found ourselves in that chase the sort of, chase the sort of the dream type thing.
I don't think we would have not been able to do that if we'd had a hit like Fatboy Slim, because I would have thought, I'm brilliant as an A&R, and I'm going to sign this record that I think is so good, and we're going to cross over this underground UK hip hop artist who doesn't want to gig,
Yeah.
And then you find out, oh no, if they don't gig, or don't want to do interviews, or they want to make a really abstract jazz record, it doesn't work. It's not, you're not this great person, that does things. We've almost had to sort of, we've just been in our world, but yeah.
Yeah, but I always really admire that, and there are certain things, and I keep referring to the game, but there are certain things that sort of we just that do make you feel grubby, and you go, I don't want to do this. I have quite a good example. So the Low Fidelity All Stars album had come out. We'd had front page of the NME, front page of Melody Maker. They were definitely sort of the ones to watch. At the time, MTV had this thing where, I can't remember the show, but I think it was Russell Brand presented it, and the band would play live, and then they'd be interviewed and things like that. And it was generally sort of seen as you're being made by MTV. We'll play your videos, we'll put you on high rotation, and it's right, you've been picked. And Dave, who was the Wreck Train, the singer, just couldn't do it. And it was like, I this is how I remember it, but he just went, I can't, it's fucking awful. It's really bad. I do not want to go on and do that sort of like that I refer to.
I mean, one day is what you're saying is that it was funny. They've got that little bit in there, which is like, oh yeah, I forgot all of this was going on at that time. It was a normal thing at that point, wasn't it? So.
And it was like, great, amazing, whoa, and I remember just being partly sort of like, come on, it's not that
sort of
bad.
hold your nose and do it,
but then also just going, I'm kind of proud of you for that, because it's utter bullshit, and it is sucking corporate cock of the worst, of the worst variety, and so that was a bittersweet moment, and
so look, I told you before, there's a parallel story going on with things that were happening with True Thoughts before I started True Thoughts that really sort of informed me and got me to understand about the music industry. Because it's interesting that you say Norman had done Corner Shop and Wild Child, because also at that time he called me up because I had done a tune with a friend that we'd released on a label which wasn't great, but Norman called me up and said, oh, I'm playing this at the wrong speed, 45 minus 8. And he just said to me, oh, can I remix it? And I was thinking, you've just done Corner Shop remix, which the promo was doing the rounds. I don't think it was the full-on Corner Shop, but as I remember, the Renegade Master mix was everywhere. And I was thinking, and I said to Norman, I can't afford to pay you. I don't have any money. I literally do not have money. I put everything, I'm living week to week, doing my club nights, and every penny I've got is, I'm trying to get this label. And he was like, oh, no, you don't need to pay me. I'll just give it to you. Just get me a dub plate, get a test pressing cut. Right. So I was like, oh, right. Okay, I'm getting a Fatboy Slim mix. What do I do? So I had in hindsight, I mean, I got conned on it so much. We put it out, so that was the second release. But I remember speaking to you. I remember bumping into you and saying, because Norman was blowing up, and I'm saying, I'm sending it to Pete Tong, handwritten to Pete Tong and Mary Ann Hobbs. And I said, but they're not playing it on the radio. And then you said, oh, Rob, are you using a plugger? And I was like, no, what, what, do you have to use a plug? Can't I just put it in the post? And then you were trying to explain, look, the industry doesn't work like that. They're getting sent, thousands of records, I guess, at that point, and you need to, how does yours get? Because I was thinking, well, if it's Fatboy Slim, surely someone's gonna play it. But I was really seeing, oh no, it really isn't like that, because there's so much noise. I know there's a lot of noise nowadays, but even then it was there. So you were the first person to tell me that. I remember I asked you who it was. I think I messaged and called those up, and it cost so much money, at least for me back then. It was very new what we're doing. It's like, okay, well, we're getting it for free. I'm sure we'll do all right. But that was one thing that I learned. And then the other thing, I remember maybe a year or so after that came out, when Norman was huge, and I bumped into you and I said, oh yeah, look, we've just got an advert for it, and I've signed it over. I'll say the numbers. And I remember saying, you've got loads of money. And I said, I think we got 10,000 or maybe a bit less for it. And you were like, oh, Rob, you could have got a lot more. And you were really like that. And I was like, oh, what? Because I remember asking someone who was an artist and saying, no, they're offering 10 grand for it. It was a car brand, I think, in Japan. And it was a really weird conversation going on with someone from America. And then obviously with what we know, like we do it now at True Thoughts. And then sometimes I was having a swim the other day, and it came into my mind because I'm speaking to you, and I was like, oh God, I could have been mortgage free or something else, or could have done it but it wasn't meant to be. It was like, oh, I'm absolutely conned. We'd license it to people really cheaply. I had no idea on the value of, oh, this is what is the music industry. And I guess in a way I was very naive and trusting people, also asking the wrong people for advice. What I know today is I should have called you up and said, we've got this, what goes on, what are you meant to do with it? But I had no idea how it worked. So that was informing you, and doing that was like, before we did True Thoughts, I realised, okay. So we got that money, and my friend who I'd done the label with, he'd said to me, I hate the music industry. He goes, you love the music, so you can handle it. But he said, there's so much bullshit involved. Everybody's trying to con you. He said, because you love the music, you're ready to deal with all of that. He didn't want to. So we got the advert and we paid off the debts. He lent me his share, and that's what I started True Thoughts with as well. But a lot of what you were doing at that point was really informing me about, oh, okay, well, there's a different way the industry works. And I think that helped me so much, all those times I was bumping into you and asking what's going on, and it was getting me to understand like a portion of the music industry. So I always want to thank you for that, because you're definitely one of the few people. Pete Cricket Ninja was definitely someone who, every time I'd see them, I'd always ask some business stuff, or what do you think of this, or what's going on. Even the other month I bumped into you, was asking you some stuff as well. So you've always been good like that. So look, I did want to say that bit, because it was like, that was fun. But getting back to you, so you're in the start of Fatboy Slim now, aren't you, off the trajectory?
I'm just going to let you. So do you think that experience informed the way you run True Thoughts?
Absolutely.
Okay,
it was one of the best learning curves. The best thing I'm only understanding now, being a lot older, what I can understand now is the good lesson that I learned by being conned, because probably at that age I would have probably thought, if I'd got a big check, I am brilliant, and I would have wasted. I would have done a 15, 20 grand video for a song of a new artist that I've just signed, because you don't understand all of these things. So what I had then is a real fast track learning curve of, oh, well, this is what goes on there. Almost seeing it as quite a high level. And then when we came to True Thoughts, it informed me about, well, where do we want to be? What's going on? And I remember with you, when I was speaking to you, there was Fatboy Slim and the other bits going on. And maybe for me, I was understanding, I think we're going to be in those other bits that are going on. And if something happens, then you just deal with that if it happens. But I think we're going to be here with what we're dealing with. So
I think so. I think, and I there's many times I wish I could have gone back, but once you've tasted, once you've sipped the champagne, evil champagne, then it is hard to resist.
Was it just as I remember, it seemed to be Corner Shop. The album comes out, that was #1, and it just seemed to be from the outside. It's like there's this huge sudden jump going on. Was
Yeah.
that
So it was Renegade Master, Corner Shop, and then Rockefeller Skank came out.
okay? Yeah,
And we were doing the Big Beat Boutique. So the club was sort of going well. We were still at the Concord. We had the club along with the label, and it's kind of, you can't really, that was important as well, because I actually posted a picture from the Essential Festival in '97, I think. And it was the first thing. And we did a night with Wall of Sound. We had a tent with Wall of Sound, and it was Norman, Bentley's, Lo-Fi's, Propeller Heads, Theo Wise Guy, myself, Hard Knocks. And we had a tiny tent because at the time, that was where we were.
yeah.
You know, and I can't remember who else played, but you know, Underworld, Orbital, maybe the Prodigy, maybe the Chems, but you know, that was sort of live club music. And then so we were booked, and in that time we were booked, all of our acts got that much bigger. And so we had this packed tent all day. And that was one of those key moments where you go, right, this feels like something's happening.
Yeah.
And then also we'd done something on the pier, and they had to shut the pier and stop the music because they were worried that the pier was going to fall into the sea, because everyone was going nuts to Norman. So there's all these little dots of things happening, and combine that with yeah, I mean, I still remember Norman playing Rockefeller Skank for the first time at the Boutique and going, Jesus, you know, people singing along with it by the end of it and just going, oh my God, I think this is something quite special. And then suddenly we're into charts, and we're into chart land, and we're you know, and then it was, I think, Gangster Tripping, and then Praise You was our sort of first #1.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So at that moment, from I guess the A&R and label side, is there, are you just in that moment and celebrating there, or are you thinking of things away from Fatboy Slim, or has it become all encompassing Fatboy Slim at that moment? Because it was a huge thing going on, wasn't it? So
yeah, I mean, in terms of because we had other people doing albums, so that, you know, like the Lo-Fi's album was, I think, around a similar time. So we were still, there was still stuff having to do. Norman's stuff kind of moved into another. I mean, I shouldn't say this because I have a few friends who get really annoyed when I say it, and because I always used to say, oh, we were just lucky or it was good timing. A&Ring Norman's stuff in those first few years was one of the easiest things ever, because he was just on such a run of stuff, you know, like that. So yeah, we had Right Here, Right Now, Praise You, Rockefeller Skank, and all these things, and it was just, you bring it in and you go, yep.
You sort of can't argue with it. And even at the time, I would understand, because I was doing my nights at the time, and I remember we lost like a chunk of our crowd to your night. I'd go down to your night and see like people, oh God, they're there now, they're not at my night. And I remember people coming up, you know, it's much more fun, which is what you were saying. We were a little bit more, you know, people would be asking for this underground hip hop record, or, you know, it was all there. So every now and then you need that little shake to go on. I mean, I was never purely trying to be that. I would always try and play records that would annoy people and feel that, oh, you shouldn't be playing this commercial song if you're doing a night like that, because I always felt we've got a right to play commercial music, but I was very much, especially in the hip hop world, there. So I was seeing, oh yeah, I mean, to me that was a brilliant understanding with music. Okay, there's little scenes that go on, and then another one comes in, and then you know, people you know, it captures your disruptors and you're capturing a moment, aren't you? And I think at that time we sort of needed that. As you said, it can get all a bit too serious, and you need everybody to just take a deep breath and relax. It's a club. We're meant to be having fun here, aren't we? As well.
It's true. It's true. I always remember. Norman wrote. Someone asked something because like we were getting all these ridiculous things. Like I was in like top 50 most influential people in, like, I think it was in the Enemy or Select or something like that. And so you would sort of we would start getting these little things that are sort of nice little ego boosts. And they asked Norman about me, and he said, we had all these people down for a really big night at the boutique. I think sort of someone played live. It was, everyone was there, loads of A&R. And Damian played Into the Groove by Madonna. And he really liked that. And I, a bit at the time, I was like, oh, why do you mention that? But in terms of a club, and I will just say this, because there is a point where it all goes a bit wrong and it goes a bit cheesy. But in this point where before it had been given the name Big B, or before it became a bit of a cliche, or it became a bit too frat boy, for want of a better pun, it was really liberating. And to have a crowd that trust you, that let you play whatever you want, that let you take those risks, is an utter joy. And it's what inspired Norman. And Norman would play, and then we'd party, and then he'd wake up the next morning and go, oh, I've got this idea. And that was his golden period, where he could not, he couldn't go wrong. And it's brilliant.
I mean, to me, I was thinking it was really good, because sonically, even Funk Soul Brother, I was thinking it's quite nuts, isn't it? And for an inverted comma, a chart tune, it's noisy, the tempo changes. And to me, because I knew I had that Lord Finesse record, because I'm always into my hip hop and buying those things. So I remember seeing Norman when he showed it. There was some TV program, and then the Praise You sample he'd taken from Pete Riley, who works at Soul Jazz and the Universe. It was one of the compilations he put together, which we were playing. We were playing those tracks at our night from those compilations. To me, it was like, oh, I'm understanding this, because these are the records I'm buying and we're playing, and there isn't a massive jump. It's like I guess for me it just seemed different and really well produced, and it was exciting. But I guess I was seeing things from the outside. And it's interesting what you said about Big B. I guess that was one of the things I think from seeing you and talking to you over the years, when we started and Quantic was doing his thing and people started calling, oh yeah, this is new jazz, although I was messaging journalists and saying, we're not new jazz, don't call us new jazz. I remember when Giles played this sort of heavy raw funk thing that Quantic did, and Giles said it's an acid jazz revival. I said, oh look, this Quantic's young, he's only 21, he doesn't actually like acid jazz. It's another different scene that's going on. But I was very, look, let's, as a label, it's really important, don't get into a pigeonhole and try and tell people, look, this is what's going on. But although I don't know, I look and see what's going on with you. You've done something, there's a genre about you and label that you did, and A&R, that it's there, isn't it? It's part, and it will, whether people know it or not, it does influence the next generation of music, doesn't it? It's with whether they know it or not. So
no, well, I mean, this was one of the things I kind of there was sort of like the bit afterwards, and he did his fourth album in I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the fourth album was fucking awful. I hated it. Me and Norm sort of fell out, although in that typical blokey way of we never talked about it, but we just sulked. So
what was the fourth album? The fourth album was,
I can't say it without twitching. It was Palookaville.
Palookaville, okay. Is that the one that had Macy Gray on it? Is that the one? Or
that was halfway between the gutter and the stars.
Okay, all right, okay.
which is a great album, but
Yeah,
we chose the wrong single. We did the Bird of Prey, which was the one with Jim Morrison, which was
yeah,
a bit
yeah,
more sensible. And we should have gone with Star 69, which was the big sweary fuck off
banger.
club record.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, but we didn't. So that's something I regret. But what was I
Look,
talking about?
the fourth album and so what goes on from an A&R point of view? So it like Skint really is your label, isn't it? It's your label, and is it you making the decisions at this point, or is there now a committee because Fatboy Slim is so huge? What goes on
Um,
from an A&R point of view if there's an album that you're not sure about or you actually don't like and you miss? What, yeah, how did that work?
yeah. Well, with so what tended to happen? So yes, all the creative control tended to be me. What was me? JC, who was my partner, he helped enormously with a lot of those decisions. So we were sort of a partnership together. I was sort of the music. He would, liaise. If it came to a video budget, for example, that was his call. So all of that side, how we marketed things, he would be the one to speak. But you then get suddenly, say with the third album, after the success of the second, it was like suddenly there's Sony International interested. We were with Astral Works in the States. We had, you have all these people putting their oar in, and you had the radio pluggers, you had the press people. So there's suddenly all these other people that are there.
Are they telling you literally about you can't
No,
do this song or this has got to be a single? It's not like that.
no,
Okay,
but they would have opinions,
okay.
and it's a I think it is a different game, and like I said about you're slightly rushed. You're like we're always sort of like slightly behind, and then you go right. We're gonna try and release the album here in this quarter, which is another sort of major label type thing, and you're going okay. And so deadlines are coming, and you're having to go right. We got this, and so say with Bird of Prey, and it was like at that point this was our best single, and but now looking back, and as I say, we should have gone with Star 69 because the idea of us trying to be a bit more, less wacky, less zany, and I think we might have been thinking that, and then you're just going now you're going no, people wanted Larry,
Yeah,
dumb,
yeah.
stupid, sweary Norman rather than clever. And so that would be something. I mean, we still sold 3 million of that record.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, and it had some amazing moments. And there's some.
What did the other ones sell? The other Fatboy Slim
Uh,
ones? Do you know
I
roughly?
I it's hard to say now. I mean, we got to about 10. I know we had got to about 10 million. And then sort of like digital came in and sort of streaming came
Yeah,
in.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I think sort of within a year or two, it was sort of about 6 million.
yeah. Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, and
uh,
it was
uh,
everywhere, wasn't it? It was just like, yeah.
absolutely everywhere. And then all over TV and syncs and all those things.
So for me from the outside, and I'm still doing my thing at True Thoughts, and the dream always as a label, you always feel you want to have like a genuine that's something that you've loved and started, and they capture a moment, and the whole world loves it. So Fatboy Slim did that, but which I guess look the tick box on the outside is look you're seen in a good way. I guess financially it's good and there's lots of things going on. What was going on for you from a really like the Damian creative A&R midfield general, point of view? Was it were you on the trajectory or were you like, oh, what
I was overthinking. I was
Okay.
overthinking like a bastard.
All right.
And I mean, this is, one of the things like that I sort of like look back on. I had kind of was always I was preempting the come down. I
Oh,
before
wow.
the well, only because I'd had because of what I'd done previously, you'd seen how it works with labels. You have your time in the sun, and then there'll be, something else will come along. A scene has only got
Yeah.
so long, you burn out. Um, I was still clinging to trying to be underground when you're on, when, well, I was going to say he's on Top of the Pops, but he never did Top of the Pops. But so we were, yeah. But then we had things like, we had um um we had the Praise You video, the Spike's video of Praise You, which is a
Unbelievably amazing, isn't it?
cultural
Yeah.
moment
Yeah.
of just such the, those two people's minds coming together, Norman and Spike, two of sort of, and going, Jesus, and that,
It gives hope
yeah,
for everybody. When I saw that video, I just thought, well, there's not necessarily a massive budget on this. I know in a way there's things going on behind the scene, but it was like you look at it and you think, well, if you have a good idea, you can just make a good fun video, can't you? Which gives, and there's a good song which is unusual, isn't it? I mean, I love Praise You. I think
yeah.
it's amazing that track. So
Well, I think Praise You was the pinnacle for me, and I think I always had this idea, the thing that every year there's probably about five credible hits, like something that's like, say, Crazy in Love by Beyonce,
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah,
is one
yeah,
of those records that
yeah,
everyone loves. You can't deny it's an
yeah, yeah. It's
absolutely
amazing.
brilliant record, and everyone loves it, and it's huge and it's successful. And I think there's a handful every year.
Yeah,
And I felt Praise You was that
yeah,
record. And it's like, it's hard to deny this isn't a brilliant track. It's got one of the best videos
yeah.
ever. It's interesting, it's creative. And I felt that was, yeah, it didn't get better than that.
Yeah. So you felt you'd reached that point, and then were you feeling pressure at this point from an A&R point of view, or you're saying you're overthinking, or were you just like, well, we were all right? I mean, does it take away your pressure in a way having a successful artist for the rest of what you're doing as a label, or was there
Um,
pressure coming from Sony? Well, we need another Fatboy Slim. Well, can't you bring us another Fatboy
no,
Slim? No, there wasn't in that.
not
That's
necessarily
yeah.
that. I mean, one interesting thing was, okay, so there was a record by a band called Environmental Science,
Oh yeah,
um, called Coming Home in a Body Bag, which was a real, very much a sort of a big beat record. You remember Crystal Method?
yeah,
That
yeah,
sort
yeah,
of
yeah,
it was a kind of
yeah,
action film trailer
yeah,
music,
yeah, yeah.
and people really loved it, and I I felt, and I had loved it at the time, but fairly quickly was going, this isn't the direction I want us to go. And that felt like a fairly not sort of like kind of almost, this is a bit like Big Beat by Numbers almost, that sort of
Yeah,
energetic,
yeah.
type of sound. And I didn't want to do that. And I didn't really want to go down that road. And looking back, it was still, we were still selling loads of it. And I think there was a few people going, you know, there's a bag full of music like this on your desk, just sort of under your desk. Why don't you release some more of it? And I was like, no, I don't really want to. And so I remember we did three sort of big money signings, which were Dave Clark, Express 2, and Freak Nasty. And
I mean,
they
they were
were kind
amazing.
of,
I remember at the time when you signed that, from the outside, it just seemed, oh, wow, you're going there. And it's not like I'm playing, like I love the Frank Nasty stuff. It's not like I'm playing House or Dave Clark stuff, but it was like, oh, these are all the credible best stuff that's out there at the
yeah,
moment, wasn't it? So,
yeah, and they were my favorite. Dave's my favorite techno artist. Extra 2 are my favorite house artists, and Darren was my favorite breaks artist. And so it was
I'll
interesting.
show that. I used to play
Ah,
that as well. I love that
what a
tune.
record! So yeah, so I think that was we did go for that, and I was
Was that a deliberate choice then? So you, I've spoke to Ross Allen before about this, and I think what he was articulating is at a major label level. There's some people who can almost, I'm in this mode and I can do the hit. So they're almost, their way of doing things is like, okay, we've got offer and I can sign more and more like this, and they're quite happy to do that. But his headspace was, you've got a bit more of a creative thing. It's not to say one's right and one's wrong, but there is almost something fighting against it, because you could probably do that as well, couldn't you? But there's something inside you that creatively is fighting against doing that. Is that am I
yeah
right in saying that?
no
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
if you come from that world
yeah,
and underground, I guess, is that or left field, or from working in a record shop, they're those you could be selling. I mean, when I first started, actually, she's not a very good example. I was going to say Sade, but everyone loves Sade now. But you would sell sort of Dire Straits, but and we sold loads of Dire Straits in the first shop I worked in Canterbury. But also you were selling Follow the Leader and Public Enemy, and those are the bits you loved.
yeah.
So I completely get that with what Ross is saying. And it's that thing of standing still, and you look and, well, why don't we try and find another Fatboy or another Prodigy, or the Chems or something like that. And yeah, I think there's always an element of I being cool is much rather is much more important to me than going just for the big bucks.
Yeah,
And I
and
think it's a
ultimately,
mentality.
it's the foundation of the success, wasn't it, for you as well?
Yeah,
And that's in your nature, and I think that's what I feel. Ross articulated almost. There are two, and it's not one versus the other. There's a skill set to do that other thing as well. That's a different skill set, but there's also
yeah,
something to celebrate with doing other journey as well. But yeah,
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think, there's probably sort of quite a bit of conflict in sort of like my head and about those things. And yeah, you find yourself in a. I remember we just found ourselves. That's it. Um, Quite early on, went. I had a friend at London Records, FFRR, Phil Howes, who went on to start City Rockers. Um, And I had gone for a job at London as a product manager, but I was down to the last two and I didn't get it. And so I could have just sort of gone into the corporate machine quite early. But he used to say the minimum amount it cost to release one of their records was £11,000. And this would have been about 95. And me and JC were like, what? Could not believe it. Could not it was like, we would never do that. We would never do that. And then suddenly we find ourselves and we're doing it, and
yeah,
you can't help it.
yeah.
And I always, I mean, we did a video for, and because the money's there and there's a budget there, and we did a 20 grand video for a Indian Rope Man song that didn't deserve, didn't need that. It was a
But
great track.
you're caught up
You
in the
know, it's
moment, are you? Because you
Yeah,
believe in the music, don't you? And you think, well, look, that's worked. Why can't this work? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and especially with videos when you're
yeah,
going, okay, well, you could argue that, we had this great run of videos with Norman, and it's like, well, why not do them all? Even my stuff. I mean, I still reach out, which we got single of the week on, and Sarah Cox was playing it, and it looked like we were going to get the A list.
Oh wow.
And so yeah, and it looked like, yeah, so Sarah Cox have made it her record of the week. Ah, there it is. There it is. And we were in this position where it's like, what do we do? We might have a hit. And so we made a video, and JC said, right, okay, we'll put 60 grand into a video. And the
Oh,
video's fucking awful. It's
you know what? I've
me.
never seen the video before. I only watched it the other day. It's the first time I've
Oh,
seen it. So
do not ban that. Do not look for that video. And and it's still, and then we didn't get the playlist, and so and
yeah.
it didn't happen, and the record went to, I think it was sort of like in the 40s, and you're just going, oh well.
Are your artist royalty statements still recouping the video, or are
still
they?
recouping still recouping, and then but you're also looking at videos for people that we said, trust me, this is a really good idea.
Yeah.
We got these people doing a video for us. It's going to be, and those people will never recoup,
Yeah.
because you've spent all this money on a video that in reality, but I don't think, well, I hope no one's too
You,
angry,
uh,
but
you,
you get caught up in it.
yeah, you're in a space, aren't you? And you're either going for it or you need to just, I guess you can say it in hindsight, because when you're in it, I can't imagine. We've never been in that position, but often what we do, which is similar to what you do, sometimes when we're looking back on the previous year, okay, what we've done, or previous couple of years, what's gone on, what's right, it's always hindsight. Oh yeah, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But it was like at the
Yeah,
time we were all like, oh, this is going to be amazing. Da, 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 will happen, I reckon, and all that. And then often, we definitely should have done that. And I'll be saying, you're all telling me not to do that, but we got a sync for it. But we've all
yeah,
got like selective memories about what we should have done and what we shouldn't have done. But in a way, I think for me from the outside, I can't imagine you not getting caught up in that. I think you'd have to be really brave to be disciplined, to be, I don't know if that's even possible with the deal you've got at Skint, to say, well, I'm going to take this and we'll just do it indie, that we can just chuck it out there while all of this really exciting thing is going on there, where there is a video budget.
yeah,
Because what was that artist going to be thinking was, well, why are you doing videos for them and you're not doing it for me? So you almost
yeah,
can't win, I think, maybe in the reality. So
yeah. No, that's true. But that's also why we started under fives,
okay,
which
so that
was
was going on. Yeah,
but also that was samples.